You accepted it immediately. 2 words, national security, and the conversation was over before it started. An AI model that millions of people were using disappeared in 3 days, and almost no one asked a follow-up question. Not because the answer wasn't worth finding, but because something in your brain was designed to stop you from looking. This video isn't about Fable 5. It's about the psychological architecture that made its disappearance feel normal. In June 2026, Anthropic released one of the most capable AI models ever built. 3 days later, the US government issued an export control directive. All foreign nationals, everywhere in the world, including inside Anthropic's own offices, lost access overnight. Anthropic publicly disagreed with the government's reasoning. Then they complied anyway, and the public moved on. What you just witnessed is one of the oldest psychological mechanisms in human history. In 1961, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram ran an experiment that disturbed the scientific community so deeply it was later banned from replication. Ordinary people, teachers, accountants, office workers, were instructed to administer electric shocks to a stranger in another room whenever that stranger answered a question incorrectly. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. They could hear screaming. They could hear the stranger begging them to stop. 65% of them kept going, all the way to the maximum voltage, because a man in a white lab coat said 4 words. Please continue the experiment. No threat, no force, no legal authority. Just the appearance of legitimacy, and the human brain did the rest. This is authority bias. It doesn't require a lab coat. It requires only a signal, a title, a uniform, a phrase that tells your brain someone above you has already decided. When that signal arrives, a part of your cognition built for survival steps in and says, "Don't waste energy questioning this. Defer. Move on." National security is one of the most powerful authority signals ever constructed. It is specifically designed to end inquiry. And it works, not because people are weak or unintelligent, but because the human brain conserves cognitive effort by outsourcing judgment to perceived authority. You didn't stop asking questions about Fable 5 because you didn't care. You stopped because your brain decided someone who knows more than you already handled it. But here's what happens after the visible act of control. This is where the psychology gets quieter and far more powerful. Anthropic was not destroyed. It was not fined. Its leadership was not arrested. It was simply reminded, publicly and on the record, who holds the authority to flip the switch. And every AI company watching, OpenAI, Google DeepMind, every lab building a next-generation model, absorbed that lesson without being told a single word. The philosopher Michel Foucault described this as the Panopticon effect. The Panopticon was a prison design where a single guard tower stood at the center of a circular cell block. Guards could see into every cell at any moment, but prisoners could never see whether the tower was occupied. And this, Foucault argued, was the most efficient system of control ever devised, because the prisoners began policing themselves. They behaved as though they were always being watched, even when they weren't, because the possibility of observation was enough. You don't need constant surveillance. You only need people to know that surveillance is possible. The Fable 5 shutdown did not regulate AI development. It installed a Panopticon. Every company building powerful AI now knows the tower exists. They don't need to receive a directive. They already know what happens when the government decides your model is too capable. So they adjust, quietly, without being asked. This is how power operates at its most efficient, not through constant force, but through the permanent awareness that force is available. Now here's the part that applies directly to you. You believe you use technology. You open an app, run a model, access a platform, and the felt experience is that these tools belong to you. But Fable 5 revealed something that was always true and almost never examined. You are not a user. You are a permitted user. And that permission exists inside a legal and political framework that can be modified, restricted, or revoked in 3 days without your consent, without your input, and without meaningful explanation. This isn't unique to AI. Every platform you use operates under terms that can change overnight. Every app on your phone exists because a company decided to keep it available. Every tool you depend on for work, communication, or information is accessible to you because, so far, nobody with the authority to restrict it has chosen to do so. You haven't been using these tools, you've been borrowing them. The shift that comes from understanding this is not paranoia, it's clarity. When you stop experiencing technology as something you own and start seeing it as something you're permitted to access, you begin asking different questions. Who granted this permission? Under what conditions? And what would have to change for it to disappear? Most people will never ask those questions because authority bias tells them someone already figured it out. Because the Panopticon means the people building these systems have already adjusted without being asked. And because the illusion of access is comfortable, far more comfortable than the alternative. The alternative is knowing the architecture of permission is real and that you are living inside it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.